A little girl has her world broken and then becomes a world breaker herself. Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. It has been a while since we've done some magic lore. It is time to dive into the lore of Kaalia because, well, she's been re-envisioned in Core 2020. And that made me think to myself, wait, she's only had 2 cards. I don't actually know the flavor behind her. So I did some research, took a look into the story, and it's quite compelling in all honesty. So I figured we would dive on into that. Now, there's some background information you're going to need to know about the setting that we're dealing with. We're dealing with Alara. Now, Alara is a weird beast because originally Alara was divided up into 5 different shards, 3 colors per shard, and they represented different things. So the main setting of this, where Kaalia grew up, was Bant, all right? And Bant was the like knightly and dragon sort of like vying for honor sort of setup, where it's like, oh, we will send out the valiant knights in a very ordered world. That is what Bant is specifically. But at this point in the story, Bant has had the other shards smashed back together. All the shards have now reconvened. They're all together. So instead of having everything into separate pieces, you've got it all shoved together. You've got Bant and Grixis and everything else just boom, all melded back into a world. And that happened with the shard Convergence, which should be converging behind me if this is all done properly. So shard Convergence, where they all slammed back together, and I do mean slammed back together. In the part of the world that Kaalia grew up in, there used to be a path to the sea. Well, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's a gigantic mountain rising on up out of this. Now, Kaalia did not, she was born before the reconvergence of the shards, but she was too young to really feel the impact of the wars that went on at that time, because you have to understand each shard had its own ideal. Bant was like knightly honor, and then there was insane stuff like Grixis, where Grixis was a plane of necromancy because there literally was no more life essence there. You couldn't birth new creatures. Everything was parasitic off of life energy from all kinds of other creatures, and there was a lot of undeath in Grixis. So that's what Grixis was all about. Now, Grixis will play a key part in the story of Kaalia as well. That's part of the reason I'm going into detail about that shard. So, she grew up as a little girl in Bant, in a relatively peaceful, nice-looking part of Bant. Again, hopefully, got it all behind me, looking all good. So, she grew up in Bant near Eos Castle. So, you know, like Ranger Captain of Eos, those cards, in that part of the world. Now, she was a poor, like we first encounter her as a small girl, and she has this problem with her hands. Her fingers taper into claws. And this never really bothered her until one day she came across a group of girls who were skipping stones in the water. And she asked if she could be a part of what was going on, and basically got bullied out of there. There was one girl who was essentially the head of the bullying, but either way, was just like, beat it. We don't want people with hands like you round us. So Leah, because this was her name at the time, Kaalia was just known as Leah. She's just little Leah girl. She wanders off dejected, but she's got like a perverse sense of vengeance almost, even at a young age, where she went and found a stone that was the same color as the eyes of this girl. And she's sitting there balancing it on the back of her hand, and then with magic, she just turns it to dust. So even at a young age, she had the ability to just boom, vaporize pebbles into dust. And for her, she felt like, oh, with my clawed up hands and everything, she felt like she wasn't really going to ever be capable of anything. But her mother, who was a mage, was like, no, you know what, you show real potential. You will most likely end up like to be a more powerful mage. So during this little bit of time where she's sitting there vaporizing this pebble and making herself, like just feeling sorry for herself, she notices across the lake something she's never seen before. It looks like a cat person. Now, she had never encountered anything like that. There weren't any of those in the Bant shard, right? So she's never seen these. These are essentially otherworldly creatures to her. But at the same time, it happened so quickly, she couldn't be sure if it was actually what she thought it was and if it was a child's fancy. So she heads on home. You know, she goes home for the day. And she decides, like, okay, you know, should I tell my parents? Should I mention this to my mother or not? And she's like, Mother, are there such a thing as cat people? And her mother just kind of half-absently answers her, yes, dear, but there are, but what would make you bring that up? They're from faraway lands. And then she just, I saw one out by the lake. And that's when her mother's eyes just kind of widen, and she's like, okay, then let's just get you ready for bed. We're gonna get you put off to bed. Now, she just goes to sleep for the night, and they're just wondering, okay, what is this pretend? Do we need to be worried? The parents are obviously concerned about what's going on with the whole, why are there cat people in our area? What's going down? So they don't know what the deal is. They don't know what the cat people know. We'll get into that later in the story. But either way, Kaalia goes off. No, sorry, Leah. She's not Kaalia yet. Leah goes off to bed. All right. Now, she wakes up the next morning and she's kind of just playing outside of her hut. Her parents say to her, you have to stay within the view of the windows where we can see you at all times while you play out there, right? Because they're on high alert. Wait, there's cat people around. We don't know what's going down. So Kaalia's off playing around the windows, and she has these kind of childish daydreams, right? She's had a number of them. So at this point, she's just imagining that she's an eagle soaring over the castle of Eos, and she goes, she's wheeling around outside, and then all of a sudden she runs around the one side of the building where there are no windows, and then furry hand snatcher, and a bag comes down over her head. The camera shook for emphasis there, purely for emphasis. So all of a sudden, she's bagged by a cat woman or a cat man. Who knows? We'll find out. Some cat person did it. So at this point, that's when shortly thereafter, a demon appears at the village where Leah lives. Okay, so this demon's presence just oppresses the village, and the servants of the demon, they all move in to round up the townfolk. Now, this demon is Nephorox, and Nephorox is actually the ruler of Grixis. So this is the demon lord of Grixis, and he has collected up all of these villagers and taken them off. For what reason? Well, interestingly enough, there is a creature that's been taken from Esper. So you had an Esper Ethereum shaper. These are the mages that would shape the Ethereum metal from the one particular shard, right? So this particular Ethereum sculptor has been corrupted by Nephorox and is now a servant of Nephorox, has had all his teeth removed, he's shaved all bald, and he looks all sickly and gross, and he's a servant of Nephorox. He specifically works in making constructs and knowing he keeps meticulous ledgers about exactly how much flesh and blood is required for every type of construct. And the project that he is currently engaged in is actually taking a Hellkite skeleton. So Nephorox himself went out and slew a Hellkite, a massive dragon, and they're in the business now of scraping the body clean, getting the skeleton ready so they can reanimate it as a skeletal dragon, as essentially a pet for Nephorox. That's what he's in charge of. So he is keeping the tallies of all the different people that they need for the flesh pits to make this all happen, and that's actually why all of Leah's village got rounded up. So they've all been taken off specifically to this area for these purposes. In the meantime, Leah has been abducted by cat people, Ajani's people specifically. They have abducted Leah, and basically she just gets desacked, and they apologize to her. There's basically the representative of the cats that deals with Leah directly is called Nira, and she explains that their tribe has lost their stone killer, and that's why they need Leah. It's like, we need your help. You're a stone killer. We need your magical capabilities. And Leah, of course, just goes, look, all I can do is like vaporize a pebble, because Nira talked about how she had witnessed her power, right? She's like, all I can do is obliterate a pebble right now. And Nira goes on to basically say, don't downplay your abilities. The way you go, you could be demolishing walls and then just walk by a castle and it falls to the ground. So she, like, Nira understands not obviously the full scope of Leah's power, clearly, because, I mean, who knew that Leah was going to turn into Kaalia with their crazy powers of angels and demons, but we'll get to that. That's next. So, this is still Leah we're dealing with here, the little girl who's scared. She's like, what do you need me for? Like, it's like, and they respond with, we need you to destroy a dragon. And they tell her it's just a skeletal dragon, but Leah's still a kid, so to her, it has the same kind of menace as actually trying to destroy a real dragon. She's just like, why me? No, I don't want to do this. I just want to go home. Like, take me home. I don't want to do this. and they say, we can't take you home. Your village has been abducted. Your village is actually gone to the same location we need to take you to. And they explain to her that all of the magic that they're doing on this Hellkite skeleton is specifically tied into a keystone. So they need her to use her magical capabilities to vaporize that keystone. And if she can pull that off, then that will mean the entire endeavor falls apart, right? So this means she has to travel over to the area, obviously escorted by the cat people, but she has to go over to this area where they're conducting these horrific rituals, just scraping the meat off of bones and doing all this horrific stuff. She's got to go there. We're also on top of that. Not only is this macabre stuff happening up there with the giant dragon skeleton and huge pits that are dug just to be filled with enough flesh, in the tunnels below where all this is happening, Neferox, the demon lord of Grixis, is just resting down there. He's just chilling out. Imagine that you would have to go to an area like that and destroy a dragon as a tiny little girl. So she basically goes, well, okay, well, I'll try and help you. She's scared, but she accepts that with her parents gone. Like, basically what happens is she starts to think about her parents and how as a little girl, it's like your dad is, hey, nobody can beat my dad. My dad's the biggest, strongest. This is what she says too. Like, she couldn't imagine her dad being caught. And what about her mother? She's a maid. Surely she would fight them off. And Nira responds by saying they've all been taken. They're all taken to this place. So Leah agrees to help. And Nira says, before we go into battle, you get a battle name. And if that's okay with you. And Leah's like, all right. So basically that's how she gets named Kaalia. The Ka part is added to her name to signify that's her like warrior essence name. So that's the point where she stopped being Leah and became Kaalia. Now the catfolk took her over to this ritual site where they basically were pretty much ready. They had all the different things they needed together to finally finish the ritual. The dragon skeleton had all been assembled. There's walkways along it and everything, like a big work construction site essentially, with all these pits of flesh and blood all around. So the cat people show up and launch an attack right away, while Kaalia just kind of scrambles around until she's able to scramble up on the back of the dragon skeleton. The cat warriors are getting taken down and winning in some cases. Nira ends up in a fight. I might have called her Kira before by accident. I don't know. Anyways, Nira ends up fighting the bald-headed, toothless, like, arch-wizard kind of guy who was overseeing the construction. The flesh sculptor, if you will. So she ends up fighting with him. She manages to win against him. Kaalia ends up actually being able to, after climbing over the skeleton and dealing with her fears and just the whole, like, thinking she was going to fall through the rib cage and how none of this would work, she was actually able to get over to the keystone and pulverize it into nothingness. And at that point, basically, that's when all the madness was happening. Right before that moment, actually, I did forget one very, very cool detail. Right before she ends up pulverizing the keystone, the ritual that would animate the dragon had started. So blood was actually flying up out of the palms of all of Neferox's servants who were there. It's absolutely intense. There's artwork actually. I'll put the artwork of it up there because it's on a magic card where you can see the blood just flowing up out of their hands. So this is all happening. Think about this. Kaalia is climbing along this huge dragon skeleton in the middle of a massive battle, terrified if she's even going to be capable of doing what needs to be done when she gets to the keystone. Below her, these servants' hands, like, they didn't cut themselves. Their hands just opened up and blood started flowing upwards. How intense would that be as a little girl for you to go through all that? And that's not all the horror that she endured either. Once the keystone plate got disintegrated down to dust and the dragon skeleton fell apart, it's not like all the servants of Neferox were gone, right? So there's still battle going on. All these things are happening. And then all of a sudden the earth just cracks and it's Neferox, because he's very displeased, obviously. His ritual did not go to plan. So he comes cracking open the earth and ends up with Kaalia getting slammed and essentially knocked out after just having seen the demon. Now, when she comes to, basically half of the entire ridge that she was inside of is just leveled and destroyed. And there is nobody left alive. Nobody. Her entire village wiped out. Everybody who was involved on both sides of it, all wiped out. She's literally the only person left alive. And on top of that, she's changed. There's an emptiness, a void inside her now, created both by being a part of that ritual and everything, and also the passing of the demon lord coming so close to her, and that whole experience, it essentially broke her in a way and left her empty inside, to the point where she would become so obsessed with power that it doesn't matter whether she has to consort with angels, demons, or dragons. And that part about her being empty and everything, that was just when she was still a kid. And that's where all the actual lore about her ends. We don't know anything about Kaalia's adult life. And interestingly enough, it makes it a little harder to peg down which of the two Kaalias actually comes first. So I'm going to present my theory on which of the two Kaalia cards comes first and why. And if you have a different opinion on the subject, by all means, let me know. I don't know what that thump was. It was somebody going, I already disagree with you. They're down in the comments already. Ah, you don't even know my theory. Just wait until I tell you. All right. So we've got two Kaalias. Now, I actually think that Kaalia Zenith Seeker is the first Kaalia. I think this is her when she's younger, both because of the artwork and the ability. So she's 1 black, 1 white, 1 red for a 3/3 flyer with vigilance. And when she enters the battlefield, you look at the top 6 cards of your library, and you can reveal an angel, a demon, and or a dragon from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now, I'm actually going to show you the other Kaalia right now as well, because I think you need to know both of them to be able to follow me with what I'm about to say here. So, Kaalia of the Vast, and this is the one that was printed before, but I think is actually a later incarnation of her. This one's 1 red, 1 black, 1 white, and a colorless for a 2/2 flyer instead of a 3/3 flyer with vigilance. Whenever she attacks an opponent, you can put an angel, demon, or dragon creature card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. And the flavor text says, I'll have my revenge if I have to call on every force from above and below. I will call upon heaven and hell in my attempts to lay waste to Neferox. She seeks to destroy Neferox. That is her goal. Her world was broken, and now she will break the world if it means that Neferox will see his end. So I think that the Zenith Seeker, here's how it feels to me. Let's look at it this way. She is a 3/3 vigilance to start with, and this to me represents like her energy when she's a bit younger, her relentlessness at the beginning of her quest for vengeance. And on top of that, when you look at her ability to look at the top 6 cards of your library and put like angels and demons into your hand, it's like her learning how to make a link with angels and demons and dragons. And it says Zenith Seeker. So at this point, she's seeking the height of her powers. That's how I interpret it. So I feel like the next stage is actually her reaching those powers, because when she attacks, she can literally launch another angel, demon, or dragon straight into play with her, attacking right away. Like, she can just bind them to her will. The Zenith Seeker can make establishing links with them, but Kaalia the Vast can just draw on vast power to literally bend a demon, an angel, or a dragon to her will. And that's absolutely amazing to me, honestly. I totally see that as the higher level of power. Now, that's my personal view on it. The whole 2/2 and non-vigilance could just show either that she's aged somewhat, or it could be the cost that she's paid to learn to take control of and make deals with demons, right? It could be that as well. I mean, when we take a look at the artwork for Kaalia Zenith Seeker, she's just, like, when you compare it to the Kaalia of the Vast, like, with Kaalia of the Vast, she's not, like, in action. She's standing there in a very, like, straightforward, I'm not currently really moving pose, but the Zenith Seeker is in action. She's swooping down with her sword ready, a staff in the other hand. It's really cool, too, that she has both demon and angel wings. Honestly, I dig it. It's a pretty good look. She's got that fiery red hair that's just trailing back as she descends with her blade. It's really, really good flavor. And the other Kaalia looks fantastic too, honestly, with her standing there with her staff held triumphantly, both sets of wings behind her, one side kind of lit in white and the other in red. It's got a good feel to it against that darkened sky. I like it, honestly, and the whole the sky behind her looks more foreboding in Kaalia the Vast than it does in Kaalia Zenith Seeker. Either way, For me, this is a pretty epic story. You start with a little girl who has her entire world taken away from her. She swears vengeance upon a demon lord, and in that quest, she learns how to subdue angels, demons, and dragons. That's pretty pimp, I gotta say. So, let me know if you guys feel like Kaalia the Vast or Kaalia, let me know which one you guys think comes first chronologically, because that's how the flavor came together for me. But I definitely am interested in other interpretations. At this point, I'm going to roll the golden scroll. These are the people who back such wondrous lore, the people who support my channel on Patreon or through channel memberships. You should join their ranks. Everyone, thanks for being here, and for now, I'm history, baby.